Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Paul Schroeder, QQQ, equity product strategist over at Invesco. We're going to take a look at weekly performance in the Qs as well as preview the earnings season. Paul, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thanks for having me, Jill.
Let's kick it off with weekly performance in the Qs. Certainly starting October off very differently than how we finished September.
Yes, definitely a big change of pace that we've seen since the start of the month here. Performance overall in the market is being led by value, but we still saw strong performance from Qs through the first few trading days of the month. Qs are up about 5.6% through yesterday's close and have made quite a turnaround here today, pairing much of the losses that we saw. This move comes despite signs of the economy and activity overall starting to slow, and obviously inflation continuing to be stubbornly persistent. The Fed's preferred measure of inflation, PCE, came in above expectation at 4.9%. We also saw the JOLTS job openings decline by the steepest amount for some time, falling over 10% month over month. This morning we saw mortgage applications decline by about 14% since last week. So we obviously continue to see a slowdown. So it obviously is a welcome surprise to see strong performance from the Qs and the overall market. Obviously, we're also seeing interest rates rise with the 10-year Treasury growing above 4%, which is the first time that we've seen since 2007. And we're obviously seeing much dollar strength that we haven't seen since the early 2000s.
What's driving the performance over the past week within the Qs?
Sure. So from a sector perspective, as I mentioned before, value really has performed well. And typical value-oriented sectors such as energy and financials really drove performance. So unfortunately, that weighed down the Q's performance when you compare it to the S&P 500. There were signs of positive performance from certain sectors such as consumer discretionary on a relative basis, along with healthcare and utilities performing well.
Let's switch gears and talk about the technicals in the QQQs. What are some of the levels that you're looking at?
Sure. So currently right now, obviously we set a new 52-week low intraday at the end of September. That would be one level that I'm definitely keeping an eye on here on short term. Going forward, I think if this move that we continue to see that's growing right now, I would look for certain areas as resistance. 286 would be an area of resistance that I would look at the first level, and if we move above that, 293 would be the next level of resistance.
And finally, Paul, let's talk about your outlook moving ahead, because we have the all-important earnings season coming up, which investors will probably welcome, considering we've just had nothing but macro headlines over the past 6 weeks.
Sure. So I think most importantly, with this earnings season, obviously we've seen valuations sell off quite a bit so far this year, but overall we haven't seen forward earnings estimates come down broadly across the market as much as people would have expected. So I'm going to be keeping a pretty close eye on these earnings announcements that are going to be coming out. A lot of the Q's heavyweights will be announcing in the third and fourth week of this month, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But I think more importantly, the guidance that these companies give is going to be extremely important to see how the rest of the year is going to be playing out.
All right. Appreciate the insight, Paul. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.